Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by Old School Lane, producing various content from blogs, videos, and podcasts discussing about movies, TV shows, video games, and everything else in between since 2011. You can check out the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, Overcast, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and YouTube. We're associated with Channel Frederator, Manic Expression, The Comic Book Cast, and The Arun Mehta Show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Casual Chats. I am Patricia, and I am here with three special guests to promote a up-and-coming documentary miniseries called Game Chasers, looking back on various video games and their importance and their significance into the video game pop culture and media history. So, may remember, we've had him twice on the show over the years promoting his documentary, The Orange Years, looking back on Nickelodeon. We have Scott Barber. Welcome back, Scott. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Thanks for having us. We're excited about this new project.
Yeah, and somebody else that we also had on the show, but it's been a while, and that would be Phil Moore, the host of Nick Arcade.
It's good to be back, and it's good to be working with Scott on this new thing. It's really cool. Thanks for
And
having us.
oh, absolutely. Thank you. And also another person who is joining us on the podcast. He is one of the producers behind the documentary miniseries. We have Jerod Costa. So welcome.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so going into this huge project. So I guess I want to catch up with both Scott and Phil since it's been a while since you guys have been on the show. So Scott, I mean, since the last time that you were on the show, you were promoting the Orange Years. So quick update on that. So how's that been going since then?
It's gone great. Since then, it was on iTunes, Amazon, DVD, all that. Then we got a really great deal with Hulu. That was really wonderful. It's crazy. It's been on there for 3 years. Yeah, now it's on Tubi and Plex, so you can see it for free. All these years later, it's totally free. Phil is in it, doing a great job.
I saw it on a plane.
That's right. Yeah, for a while there, we had a plane deal. Yeah, that one like paid the best out of all of them. But yeah, that's it. I mean, the Orange Years has done fantastic, and I'm excited to be working with Phil again, but this time in a more close capacity.
Awesome. And Phil, so yeah, the last time that we were on the show, you said that you were going around various conventions and continuing to do Nick Arcade, and you were also promoting like various projects as well. So how has that been going since then?
Well, the conventions, it's weird. It took a little dip when COVID happened, and then
Of
it took
course.
a little dip again when the strike last year happened. We could go out, but because of the union stuff, we couldn't really talk about why we were there. It was really odd. All of that is in the past, and we're revved up again. So still doing the conventions. Totally blown away by '90s, just '90s kids in general, because they are the best fan base in the world. The fact that they want to talk about and hear stories about this really capsulized moment in time that like just made us all feel good about being alive is it's amazing. And then with regards to like my various projects, I mean, I've been spending a lot of time working primarily as a game show producer or challenge producer, making up games for game shows. But I also had a chance to dip my toe into the social media world. I worked for a while with Mr. Beast. I worked a while for his buddy Preston. So it's been kind of interesting seeing that side too. It's like it's both sides of the world coming together for me. And still at this time, at this exact moment, still producing game shows. So it's been fun. It's been great.
Awesome. Now let's talk about this project. So, Game Changers, the documentary miniseries where you focus on games that change the game. So, I like to know from all of you, especially from I'd like to know from Scott and Jerod, how did the idea come to be?
Yeah, the idea kind of came to be after the Orange Years. That was such a fun project to make, such a fun project to promote, and the response to it was so good. You know, on Hulu, it was for the majority of the time it was on there. It was one of the most watched documentaries, most trending, and most liked. It was crazy. And in a world where that kind of documentary is not the popular thing, everybody wants crime, everybody wants murder and death and destruction. But in truth, it feels like people actually don't just want that. They may want that some, but something like the Orange Years that was just pretty much positive, just celebrating something. Obviously, people like that. The numbers proved that. So, I've done other things since then, pitched to different streamers and networks, and that's fine. But that is what a lot of people want, is death and destruction and murder. And it was like, what could we do that was that we could just do ourselves, that we could do a Kickstarter for and make it the way we want to make it, the same way I did with Orange Years, make it and then sell it. So while we're making it, we don't have anybody telling us what to do, and we can make it the way we wanted to do. And we thought video games is something really great. And I thought about Phil immediately and said, well, you know what? I'll call up Phil. And if he wants to do it, that would be really cool, because retro games with Phil, that just feels perfect. And I did. I said, hey, it's going to be stuff like Mortal Kombat and Star Fox and Centipede. And his response was just, you had me at Star Fox. And I said, there we go. That's it. This is perfect.
Like basically what he's saying is, let's see, old games, let's get an old man. Yay!
Yeah, so I'd like to know from your perspective, Jerod. So how did you get involved in the project?
Well, me and Scott met many, 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 many years ago, and we worked on multiple projects together, but it's been a little while. So I've been kind of dying to work with him. And, I think the nostalgia for gaming, that seed was planted when we were all very, very, very young. And it never really goes away. I think it's something that like kind of implants into your brain where you never actually stop thinking about it. And when Scott approached me with the idea, it seemed like a no-brainer. Then he mentioned Phil, who I've never worked with before, but he's a superstar, and I'm happy to be working with him now.
That's great. You know what? I mean, I think that an opportunity to start on another project, especially with video games, is perfect, considering that we've had a lot of various documentaries over the years that focuses on particular medium that is for a niche audience. Various types of media that focuses on specifically video games, with fans coming together or even the creators coming together to finally tell their stories, is becoming much more common nowadays than when it used to be, in which that it used to either be like really private, or the fans didn't get an opportunity to express themselves, but now thanks to the internet, they're able to. So, yeah, I mean, just by understanding about the project, I think that yeah, there's definitely a lot to look forward to. So, I'm just going to read off some of the list of the games that you are going to be showcasing so far in this miniseries. So, Dragon's Lair, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, Wolfenstein 3D, Tomb Raider, Myst, Mortal Kombat Centipede, and Star Fox. So, why these particular games? I'd like to know.
Um, what do you think? Phil does a really good job of explaining like what game changers means, like how the name goes along with how we kind of chose what would be on there.
Yeah, it was interesting when Scott and I were first talking. He came to me, and the thing that really piqued my interest in doing this is, along with some of the, we talked about doing these conventions and Comic Cons, but because Nick Arcade was a game show about video games, I sort of double dip. I can go to a Comic Con or a '90s con, but I also get invited to gaming expos. And what happens is that people come there and they have this love for these games, and there are certain games that we all just know. I mean, I bet you everybody listening will stop and go, "Hey, what about this game? What about this game?" There are certain games we all just know, we all just love, and they seem to have their own sort of following, and they've been doing extremely well. But there's some games, whether they were popular or well known or not as popular as others, those are the games in which something shifted. Like you went to sleep and the world was one way, and when you woke up the next day when this game came out, it was never the same again. And that's why these games, they're not necessarily the top games in the world or the most popular, but there's something about each one of those games that actually literally fit the title of this docu-series. They were game changers. Whether it was you were doing a strolling game and all of a sudden the game went 3D. And what level of 3D was it? Or it was immersive. Or all of a sudden you were looking at the player from a behind their head or behind their back sort of perspective. We all play video games now, and we are used to the cinematic scenes in between. But the first time it happened was the first time it happened. That literally changed the game. And so the games that we have in there really have something unique, and it did something very, very, very notable with how it changed how we now play games. A lot of games we just take for granted. We just look at it and go, that's how it is. But before it was a is, to make it a was, And so that's what these games are. These are games that really define the industry and where it is now, the evolution of where things are, and how do we get from there to here.
I like that answer, especially since a lot of these games that you have listed in your Kickstarter, they have been very influential in some way, shape, or form. Whether it be that they changed a genre or invented a genre, or whether that they were able to popularize a particular mechanic of games, or were able to immerse people with graphics or with a gameplay style that they've never experienced before. I can see the reason on why that these particular games you guys want to start off with in highlighting, because I do think that they are very important. You're absolutely right.
And also, aside from the things you just named, because you are 100% spot on. Sometimes it's subtle things that your brain, your eyes didn't really think about it, but your brain heard it and your brain realized it. Something as simple as Lara Croft Tomb Raider. We were all used to action heroes like Indiana Jones. I grew up watching Terminator in the movie theater. But here all of a sudden now you have a female action protagonist, and you don't think twice about it now. A video game could have literally been the foundation that paved the way for our Ripleys and our Sarah Connors and our Diana Princes. But your brain, your body, your mind just got used to it by just playing a game that did all of these fantastic things without even realizing, oh wow, this is a woman that I'm playing. Guys did not mind picking up the controller and it wasn't some big beefy dude and he's grabbing the gun. You just grabbed the controller and you sent her on her way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Yeah, that is very true, especially in a time in which when you get to explore many different locations and you can be able to have very immersive gameplay where you were climbing up ruins and exploring. So yeah, I do agree that Tomb Raider is one of the defining video games that came out during that time period. And even since then there was movies, there was various spin-off games, and yeah, and even still to this day, like Lara Croft has become part of our pop culture. And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, you could even argue for all of these particular video games that they were able to bring something to the table. Like Wolfenstein 3D was able to bring about the first-person shooter, which is now still
Mhm.
popular to this day. Dragon's Lair was able to immerse everybody into a fully realized 2D animated style game in a time in which it was all pixelated. You have Myst, which was basically like a god simulator, which you essentially got to control what your utopia was, which was
Mhm.
very revolutionary. So, yeah, I think that every single one of these games has something there that a lot of people nowadays take for granted, but back then it was not
It was a
possible.
game changer.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I'd like to know. Now, I'm sure that it was very difficult for you guys to decide on which games were going to be the first ones you were going to highlight. So, were there any games that you wanted to have, but maybe you either were cut, they were cut because you wanted to save it for maybe a second season, or maybe they just weren't as influential enough, or maybe you couldn't get the people who worked on the games to have an interview with them. So, were there any games like that that you really wanted to highlight but couldn't for some reason?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think honestly we could do like 100 seasons of this with the amount of games that we would want to put in it, right, Scott?
Yeah, for sure. I think some of those were ones that we know we needed a bigger budget. Like Mega Man, that's a huge one. And I think it's big, but it's not, nobody knows the story as well as something like Mario or Sonic. It's big, but it's not, the story isn't all the way out there. But the problem is pretty much everybody that's involved in that is overseas. So we knew that for our first season, that'd be difficult to pull off, but that's that's a huge one that that we wanted to do. Another thing too, we'd love to get into more things, like maybe each season do something different, like games and then maybe consoles and stuff like that. Phil had brought up a good point when he was all the peripherals, you know, the Rob the Robot, the original blaster, the Power Glove, all that stuff. Because he was saying when he worked on Nick Arcade, you could tell the story, Phil, but he brought that up, the peripherals, and I thought that'd be cool one day.
Yeah, there were one of the perks for working on Nick Arcade was back in the day. Since video games were brand new, nowadays you mention a game, they're going to hit you up and you have to pay them. You know, if you didn't get the permission to even show their product, but it was reversed back in the '90s. In the '90s, I could be sitting at home just minding my own business on a Saturday. The doorbell would ring. There's the FedEx person out there, and they're just delivering stuff to us because they wanted us to showcase their product on the show. So it's not like we had to ask permission, but the coolest part about it was we already had the consoles on the show, and we all had them at home. But it was the extra bazooka that we got, and it was the power gloves that we got, and it was all of these other things. Like even before we had the Bluetooth technology, they were like toying with wireless technology with certain things. We got prototypes to games that 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 it took 20 years later for that to actually come out. I mean, it was revolutionary stuff like that. And it wasn't just the games, it was the extra stuff. Great, you have the Nintendo, but do you have the bazooka? You know, and who had the bazooka? Most people were busy just trying to get the game and trying to buy the actual cartridges to get in it, blow those things, pop it in. But if you had all of the exterior stuff, the accessories, wow, that in itself, it was another sort of game changing thing where you got the game, you got the console, you talked your parents into buying the extra controllers so then you can play with somebody, and then here's somebody who's like sitting back and they're blowing you away because they have an accessory product, and all of a sudden your game console needed more. And even that concept was just revolutionary. I never, I would never have thought you were going to places like Chuck E. Cheese and Showbiz and Discovery Zones and those places where you want to play your arcade games. That once you took the console from those arcades and put it in your home, it became, it's like I can't just have the shirt. I gotta have the shirt and I have to have the watch. And I can't just have the watch. You gotta have the earrings to go with the dress. You gotta have it all. And we want to talk about the all that went with some of these things that really on the surface we just go, oh, a video game. But no, so much more.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think I remember many years ago in which I was in college and I saw the movie The Wizard, and they were promoting
Oh.
things like the Power Glove and various other accessories. And yeah, they made it sound like it was so cool. And then when you get to know people from either the playground or from school and they had a cool accessory, it's like, oh, look at this accessory that I got for my Game Boy. I can be able to play even though that it's at night and I don't have to worry about like turning on the light, or if I'm in the car
Mhm.
traveling for long distances, I can be able to plug in this battery accessory and I don't have to worry about like dead batteries or something like that. So yeah,
Yeah,
I can definitely see accessories playing off something in a future episode, because I think people have that memory of like an accessory. And yeah, I think even still to this day, whether it be with like an accessory that helps with like battery life or being able to see better, or even just like a little accessory to like decorate your handheld or your console. I think that at some way, shape, or form, people still remember that.
yeah. Oh, Patricia, I had a Sega Game Gear and had the adapter where you pop it in and it made it a television. Like it
Wow.
would convert your Sega Game Gear. You take the cartridge out, you buy this other thing, and it pops in the back
Oh my
and
gosh.
set on top. And then all of a sudden, your Game Gear converted into a television with a little antenna on it. Like, who knew about this stuff?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's actually
I
pretty
was in a
cool.
I was in an actual cool position because, like I said, they were sending us things to entice us to feature their products on the show. And look, with a lot of companies, they didn't know, they weren't necessarily watching Nick Arcade, so something like that wouldn't be anything we put on the show. But the fact that by virtue of them just trying to get us their products, I was discovering there was so much more than just console controller and game out there associated with almost every console. It was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do remember on nights when I was playing with my Game Boy and it was getting really late at night and I didn't want to turn on the light to like bother anybody. And so I actually had one of those portable lights that you
Lights.
actually plug in to the Game Boy.
Uh huh.
And I was able to play at night, but the thing drained the batteries like crazy. But I needed to finish up this level because I wasn't tired yet. So yeah, I do have some way, shape, or form some memories of like accessories, or even another thing, third-party console controllers in which you have like the Super Nintendo or something like that, and they even have like those turbo buttons that if you didn't
Yes.
want to
Yeah.
like push the button all the time like really really fast because it wears off your thumb, so you just have like a turbo button so you can be able to just like have it done for you so you won't have to worry about it or something like that. So
How cool was it to not have to play Qbert with your controller sort of like this, and then bam, bring in the joystick, and you could play it just like you really. There we go. Oh, that's the way I don't know. There we go. I'm doing the impression. But it was like you're playing against somebody. You go to play somebody, go over somebody's house. They said we're going to be competing against Qbert. They're taking their controller and it's kind of holding it sideways so it kind of gives them the feel like the thing, and then you pop up and you're going, I've got the thing here, and you're doing it like in the arcade. It's so many of those things that we could get into in future episodes. We want to get into in future
Yeah.
episodes.
oh, for sure, I can definitely see that. Yeah, so I like to know about the production of the episode. So yeah, tell us about like how an episode of the documentary miniseries happens. Like, start off with like your research and then your interviews and your writing process and your filming process. So take us on a day on how it all happens.
I could I could give a brief overview. They're all different, but typically the same way we've done the documentaries. You do your research, so you're not just going in there and going, "What's it like to
Uh,
play games?" What's your favorite game? Just the like softball questions, and kind of write out what the outline will be, and then yeah, do the interviews, and then let it change. A lot of times, there's parts of the story that you didn't necessarily know were going to be big parts of it until you get there, um, until you hear it from them. You hear new things because you can research all day, but until you talk to the person, it's different. Same way with Nickelodeon. I think we knew a lot about it, but it wasn't until we heard from those people. I like how in the movie Phil says about Rugrats, the babies were all weird, and it's like, oh, I never knew that until that point.
until I had
And
that conversation with Arlene Klosky. Yeah, it was amazing. Why the babies were sort of misshapen and not beautiful specimens like they would be on Disney.
yeah, Phil says in our crowd fund, it's the people that put their blood, sweat, and tears into this. So that's really what we want to focus on, is getting those people that were integral to making this and hearing it from them. You can read interviews with them, you can see research. There's a lot of great like kind of documentaries that are out there on YouTube that give you a lot of information, but the difference here is hearing it right from them, and then finding those people that are integral to the story. And sometimes it might be somebody different than you thought would be. They might say, oh, have you talked to this person? So I think that's it. Coming up with your rough outline, determining who are going to be your storytellers for that, doing the interviews, and then in post kind of revamping your original outline to now make it be alive.
Yeah, and by making it personal and getting to the nitty gritty with the folks who did put their life into developing these things, what you're hoping to do is set an outline that really brings out their heart and what they were doing, and in that's when you get those nuggets of wow. Look, if this docu series was just stuff that you could Google, then it wouldn't be worth doing. I mean, even some of
Yeah.
these great documentaries that are out there right now that talk about gaming, it's a general overview. But if we all really had the time, we could literally just Google each and everything. But, as he mentioned about the story about the Rugrats, you're not going to find that anywhere. You're going to get that by talking to someone who's poured their blood into it. I was in the car riding down Sunset Boulevard with the creator of the Rugrats, talking about our kids. We were talking about our kids, and you can Google how many kids does Arlene Claus get. And you could read that, but you're not going to read the motivation for how the Rugrats were drawn until you're just talking to somebody about something that they are passionate about, something that they created and poured their heart and soul into. And that's the kind of things that we are striving to outline so that when we talk to these people, it's not generic conversation about things you could Google. It's the heartfelt stories about the people that created these things that get you those moments that go, wow, I would never have known that had we not watched Game Changers.
There's always something so satisfying about getting a hold of the person that was involved in something that you love and hearing it from their perspective. I've been doing this for over 10 years where I've talked to many people who have done various projects that I absolutely love. And I just love getting to know firsthand about all of that stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
sure, you're right. I mean, with the advent of the internet, it's much easier to like look it up online compared to nowadays, in which it's kind of like a mystery. Like you don't know about how all of this happened. But
Right.
I think that there are some things that even some people have never considered talking about because they've never been asked that
Yeah.
question. Everybody
Exactly.
asks the same question about various other things, like, how did you come up with this? And what was your favorite whatever? But what about the nitty-gritty stuff about like, what was your response when you first saw how it impacted so many people's lives or something like that?
Yeah.
So getting to hear from that perspective, I think is very important because it opens up another layer of information that has never been showcased before. And I love it when people are able to do that, when they're able to just continue to peel off those layers of the story behind more things that you wanted to know about, but had never had the chance to get involved with either talking to the person or maybe either like asking the question in an AMA on Reddit or in a convention when they are having a panel or something like that.
Mhm.
And I think that nowadays, I think life is becoming more precious because, I mean, I've been seeing in recent years about like how people are becoming very secluded or, people have since passed away and that knowledge is never going to be able to come into life ever again because they're gone. I mean, unless you were able to ask that question, then that information is lost with them.
Mhm.
So I think that being able to have the opportunity to ask these questions and being able to learn about this stuff and then share it with others who are interested in this is very important.
Mhm. I mean, it's like it's talking to people who made the thing that you love, talking about the thing that you love.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I can tell you all. I, if anybody out there is listening is a pet owner, you can Google what it's like to own a dog, or you could ask the dog on it. And you will get an entirely different perspective than just what's written there. When you hear the love from the people that have these pets, whether it's dog, cat, whatever. The same thing is true in the world. I find it true in the world of creating. We're going to be talking to people who created these video games, but I mean, I have friends who are musicians. I have friends who are artists, and there's something personal. There is a thumbprint on it. It is unique to them as your DNA and your fingerprint. And hearing it from them, it's going to be a perspective that you can't get anywhere else.
Hmm. Yeah, I do agree. So I also like to know from all of you guys. I mean, like, what has been your favorite moment so far in putting together the documentary miniseries? Like, has there been any particular interview that really was a highlight for you, or learning something that you never knew about your favorite video game, or just even like doing the research and talking to one another? So I like to know what has been your favorite so far.
Well, I'll just say first, we're pretty early on in the production process. We've got a couple of interviews down, but doing research, Jerod and I have done a lot of research about Centipede, and he's really taken the lead on that. Reaching out to Donna Bailey. So I don't know. For me, that's been one thing. Learning from you, Jerod, about kind of what you've discovered with Centipede, because it's not just a game that was a cool arcade game where you shot a centipede.
No, I mean the story is great. She was a female developer at a time when there were not female developers, and she didn't even start off in gaming. And she got into that, and she wanted to make a game that wasn't about shooting humans. And the colors and the bright colors and everything, she wanted to make something for her, which in turn was for the females. And that's a story that's very I don't know. It relates to our times now too. And it's like you guys said before, it's a story that needs to be told.
Yeah, that's a great example because I mean, even still to this day, you don't hear a lot about female developers being able to go out into the industry and do something that they love. Like, oh, I know
Yeah.
this really interesting concept. I want to be able to do it. I feel that the industry nowadays is really shackled into a particular thing. It's like, oh, the general audience is not going to like this because they're into this. So unless you're an indie developer who is passionate to do a project of your own, unfortunately, the industry is going to shackle you into saying, well, kids are not into this genre, they're into this genre because it makes all the money and it gets all the acclaim on social media and stuff like that. So, you know what? I mean, I would love to hear more stories about people who are passionate about to create an idea that they are able to accomplish and become really notable for it. Yeah, I'm another thing in the industry that I mean, we love video games and we have a passion for them and we have a love for them. But unfortunately, video games in recent years has had a bit of a negative light in terms of the behind the scenes stories regarding about crunch period and various other accusations of people not being treated properly. Have you ever decided maybe in a future episode to go into that? Yes, there are some moments in which maybe, the video games, that you love have been fantastic, but there are some points in which maybe there is a cost to them and we should bring awareness to it.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. That would be something that we would seriously interested in doing. Maybe as we get going with further episodes, subsequent episodes. We kind of want to kick things off by getting people to know what the show is about and to reconnect with a loved one. To discover stuff about them that they never knew before. In this case, it's video games. And so the first season is really focused on going back to where it all began. And as it builds, I mean, listen, our goal is to do this multiple seasons. And then as we lay that foundation and the foundation hardens, then you can start building on it. And we realize, wow, we have a really strong foundation. And now we can tap into some of those other deeper layers and still connect the dots. And here we are today, but remember this thing that happened back then, and how do we get from there to here? So I mean, yeah, it will be something to really look into down the road because it is important. It is important to point out as much fun as we have. It's not all it's not all bed of roses for the folks that are involved. But this is about talking about. I like to liken it to the old space program. This is about the Mercury asteroids. This is about the Apollo asteroid. Well, I want to talk to John Glenn and Neil Armstrong of the video game world as the foundation. Eventually, we will on multiple, after we do subsequent seasons, get into things like like the Challenger. But for right now, this is about John Glenn and Neil Armstrong.
Okay, I could definitely see that for sure. All right, so I like to wrap things up because I know that you guys are still in your pre-production period and there's a lot that you don't want to spoil, which of course completely understandable. So, yeah, I just want to say, what is the biggest message that you want to relay on your viewers and your audience once they finish off this six-part documentary miniseries? Like, what is the most important thing that you want them to take away from this?
Wow, that's a very good question, Patricia. I don't think we've been asked that question before. I'm gonna let Scott or Jerod start off with that one. That's a really good question.
I'll just say real quick, to go back to the Orange years, there were a lot of people that were on camera. The Mark Summers, Phil, Elisa Reyes, Lori Beth Denberg. But I think a lot of people didn't know who Jerry Laybourne was. Your average person, and didn't know that all the way from you can't do that on television to all that. That's a long time. She was behind all of that. And so that really, when I hear about people say, I'm a total Jerry Laybourne fan now after watching this, I love that. So people like Donna Bailey that Jerod mentioned, and other people that, a lot of these people outside of the gaming world, and even to an extent in the gaming world, they're not household names. So I think that's what I really look forward to is giving people credit that haven't gotten that credit that they deserve.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking, I literally like in my head said, "Wow, at the end of video games, when you beat the game or finish the game, the credits roll." And I literally stopped in my head and went, "Wow!" To give credit to the credits. That's the goal.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's the goal. To give credit to the credits.
What do
I
you
love
think,
that.
Jerod?
That's perfect. Phil summed it up entirely. Yeah, I can't go after that. I mean,
That's absolutely perfect. You're absolutely right because it's actually funny that you mentioned about the credits because I mean especially for like old video games back then in which like some people couldn't even properly credit themselves and so they had to have like a weird pseudo name and it's like but who was
Mhm.
this person who designed that level? Who was that person who did that music? Who was that person who gave color to these characters? I want to know. And so now that you're finally able to answer some of those questions that maybe some people don't know about, I think it's important that we give appreciation to that for sure. And I think that a message that, as somebody like me who loves video games, I think a takeaway from this is that the people who make them, they should get the appreciation that they deserve because, for a lot of people, they don't know what impact that they've done. And I think that maybe with the advent of the internet, in recent years, I think that they have understood it, but I can assure you that there are plenty of other developers who maybe have retired from the industry a long time ago or are still working but don't necessarily like go to conventions or go to panels or anything like that and are just still working. They don't know what kind of impact that they've made in the industry that millions of
Yeah.
people are saying, "Wow, you did this. Thank you so much for that." And yeah, I think that showing the light of all these people doing that, I think is very important. And it just goes to show you that, games are not just some like easy thing that you just put together in a computer and it just automatically, boom, you have a game. Or
Right.
it's not just like, oh, it's something that you waste your time on for like 30 minutes or whatever. Or it's not something that condones negativity towards others and it creates negative repercussions or anything like that. I think that um just like with a book, just like with a movie, just like with anything, games can be able to transcend to much to anybody, whether it be with imaginations or creativity or being able to do their own projects or whatever. I think that knowing the story behind it, I think is crucial nowadays because
Mhm.
we need to see who is responsible for this so that we can give them our full appreciation.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
I listen. I'm gonna pull a Jerod, and you said it perfectly. How do you follow that? How do you follow that? Patricia, mic drop. Boom.
there
That's
Yeah.
you go, mic drop.
perfect.
All right. Well, I guess we can close it off here. So, yeah, once again, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I really do appreciate it.
of course.
You
Thank you.
having us. Thank you
Yep.
so much.
So, yeah,
And
once again, please plug and promote Game Changers.
It's the Kickstarter. Check it out. You can follow us at Game Changers Series on Instagram, uh, GameChangersSeries.com. And if you just Google Game Changers Kickstarter, you can find it. We're going strong, but we need all the help that we can get to really make this the series that the fans deserve. That's what we want to do. So please, if you're listening, if you can donate, I know times can be tough. Any little bit helps, and getting it in front of as many eyes as possible helps. So if you know somebody that would be into this, they're into games, they're into retro games, or they're just into retro stuff, please get this out to anybody that you can, so we can just do a good job for you.
yeah, I mean, listen. It's said on YouTube all the time, but like share, like and share. And yes, times are hard. We're in a weird state right now. But even if you don't have a lot, I like to say this: if 10,000 people each just gave $2, boom. So it doesn't necessarily take a lot from one person, but just like the video games themselves has created community. I mean, that's why I love what you just said, Patricia. It has created a community. Well, the community can help create this particular show, and that's
Yeah.
why we have the Kickstarter. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I have almost 14,000 subscribers on the Old Schooling YouTube channel. And if all of those subscribers can donate at least $10, you'll be able to make the funds and then some. So, all of my subscribers on YouTube and even some of my listeners on my podcast feed and even people who follow me on social media, if you're able to give at least $1 or more so that you can be able to see this project become a reality.
We would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's a passion of ours from the people who are passionate about this thing we love.
All right then. Well, I think that should be it for now. So, again, if you want to plug or promote anything, then go for it.
Well, it's all about game changers right now.
All right.
There's
Yeah.
nothing that I'm doing right now that is more important than getting the support from everyone listening, so that we can make something that we think will finally put the spotlight on the geniuses that created this thing that have. Uh, we all love. We don't want to take it for granted. We want to put the spotlight on them. So it's all about game changers. Find it, share it, and by all means, support it.
All right, then. So, thank you so much for listening, everyone. Let us know in the comments below about your thoughts of Game Changers. Are you one of the many donators to this project? If not, are you interested in donating? And also, if you are interested in learning more about it, you can go check out the Kickstarter or have all the links in the description below for you guys to check it out. And as usual, my social media feed is as the following. Check me out on youtube.com/oldschoollane, facebook.com/oldschoollane. I'm on Twitter at Patty_B_Miranda. You can check out the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, all those places. New episodes of the podcast will go there first, and then it'll go up in a few days on YouTube. So, yeah, once again, go check out the Game Changers Kickstarter page, and if you can, please donate, and if not, then share it amongst people who are interested in it. So that's it. Hope to see you around soon and take care.